You were taught a simple rule in school. An island is surrounded by water. A continent is a giant landmass. Australia is surrounded by water on every single side. So Australia must be an island. That's the obvious answer. But the real answer is far stranger. Australia is not an island. It is the smallest continent on Earth. And the line between those two words has almost nothing to do with water at all. It has to do with something buried far beneath your feet, something you will never see, something that decides the fate of entire land masses over hundreds of millions of years. Think about the word island for a second. Greenland is an island. It's massive, bigger than most countries. It sits in water. It looks, from space, almost exactly like a bigger version of Australia. So why isn't Greenland a continent? And why is Australia one? The answer isn't size. It isn't shape. It isn't even how the land looks from above. It's what's underneath. Every continent on Earth sits on top of its own distinct piece of crust, called a craton. A craton is old, ancient old. Some of the rock inside the Australian craton is over 3.5 billion years old, formed when the planet itself was still cooling from its violent birth. That rock has survived longer than almost anything else on Earth. It has outlasted dinosaurs, outlasted the breakup of every supercontinent, outlasted ice ages you've never heard of. Greenland doesn't have that. Geologically, Greenland is stitched onto North America. It shares crust, shares plate movement, shares a tectonic identity with a much larger landmass. It's an island resting on someone else's foundation. Australia has no landlord. Its foundation is its own. This idea comes from a field called plate tectonics, and it wasn't even accepted science until surprisingly recently. In the early 1900s, a German scientist named Alfred Wegener proposed that continents weren't fixed in place. He said they drifted, slowly, over millions of years, like puzzle pieces sliding across the surface of the planet. Scientists laughed at him. Actual laughter in actual academic journals. It sounded impossible. Solid rock drifting? But Wegener was right. Decades after he died, researchers found the proof buried in the ocean floor, in matching fossils on opposite sides of the Atlantic, in rock formations that lined up perfectly if you pushed the continents back together like a jigsaw puzzle. Wegener didn't live to see himself vindicated. He died on an expedition, in Greenland of all places, studying the very forces that would later confirm his theory. So here's what's actually happening under Australia right now, in this exact moment while you sit watching this. Australia is riding its own tectonic plate, not sharing one, owning one. And that plate is moving north, toward Asia, at roughly 7 centimeters a year. 7 centimeters doesn't sound like much. It's slower than your fingernails grow in a decade. But multiply that by geological time, and Australia has traveled thousands of kilometers since it broke away from the ancient supercontinent called Gondwana, roughly 180 million years ago. Before that split, Australia wasn't alone. It was fused to Antarctica, to Africa, to South America, to India, all one enormous landmass. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the pieces pulled apart. Australia drifted north and east, carrying its ancient craton with it like a turtle carrying its shell, completely intact, completely separate, completely its own. That's the difference. An island rides along with a bigger plate. A continent has its own plate, its own deep root, its own multi-billion-year story written in stone. Here's where it gets stranger, though, because Australia isn't even the strangest case. In 2017, a team of geologists led by Nick Mortimer published a study that made headlines around the world. They argued that there is a hidden continent, almost entirely underwater, sitting beneath New Zealand. They called it Zealandia. About 94% of it is submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean. But by every geological measure, it qualifies. Its own crust, its own craton, its own tectonic boundaries, distinct from the plates around it. A continent, mostly drowned, hiding in plain sight for millions of years, and almost nobody knew. That discovery forces you to ask an uncomfortable question. If a continent can be 94% invisible under the ocean and still count, then what you can see on a map means almost nothing. The line between island and continent was never about what's visible at all. It's about identity, root structure, deep history. Which brings you back to Australia, and to your brain, and to why any of this should matter to you at all. Your brain evolved to sort things quickly. Land, water. Predator, prey. Safe, dangerous. That sorting system kept your ancestors alive on the African savanna, where a snap decision could mean the difference between eating and being eaten. Categories saved lives. Fast categories, especially. But fast categories are lazy categories. Your brain looks at a shape surrounded by water and files it instantly under island, the same way it looks at a spider-shaped shadow and files it under danger before you've even consciously registered what you saw. It's not stupidity, it's efficiency. Your mind is running an ancient shortcut, built for a world where the deep geological truth of a landmass never once mattered to survival. There's a term psychologists use for this. Ellen Langer, a researcher at Harvard, spent decades studying what she called mindlessness, the mental state where you process a situation using an old category instead of looking freshly at what's actually there. You do this constantly. You did it the moment you assumed Australia was an island, because it looked exactly like one. And looking was enough. It usually is enough. Most of the time, your fast categories are close enough to correct that acting on them costs you nothing. But every so often, the shortcut fails you completely, and the only way to catch it is to ask one extra question. Not, what does this look like? What is this actually made of? Australia looks like an island. It behaves geologically, historically, structurally like nothing else on Earth except 5 other landmasses, each one carrying its own ancient plate, each one older and deeper than the water around it will ever be. So tonight, when you look at a map or a globe or even a picture on your phone, remember that the shape you're seeing is only the last visible inch of a story that goes down billions of years and thousands of kilometers beneath your feet. The ocean around Australia isn't what defines it. The ocean is just the part you happen to be able to see. The real answer was never about the water at all.